Money should simply be a tool to do the things we want to do to enjoy life. It shouldn't be the thing, right? Money is not the goal. I think the differentiator as far as women, they want to know what's the money going to do for me, or what can I use the money for my family? How can I impact my grandchildren? And I think that's where identifying some of these specific goals, things you want to do, becomes so critical. It's just getting it out there and saying, okay, I do want to help my grandchildren go to college, or I do want to take my family on a big trip once a year. And so identifying those things that are most important, and you say, well, what's important about money to me? Because it's not going to be money. Money is not the answer. Well, it's just money. That doesn't work. It's security. It's freedom. It's independence. It's ability to make an impact on others around me. And it doesn't necessarily have to be family. It could be, charitable inclination that you might have. So many people get involved with their pets or just making a difference in somebody else's life.
Welcome to the Sock Door Podcast, where life is messy, but we always find meaning in it. Every week, we pull out the stories, the lessons, and the hidden gems. And then we ask the big question, keep it or kick it? If you're ready for real talk, brave steps forward. I'm your host, Lisa Begley, and you're listening to the Sock Door Podcast. Let's jump right in. Welcome to the Sock Door Podcast, where real life finally has a place to land. Today's episode is brought to you by Project Icon, helping leaders and founders share their story, build their brand, and find their voice. What does a man learn about security after watching the women in his life navigate loss? My guest today is Eric Blake, certified financial planner, founder of Blake Wealth Management, and host of the Simply Retirement podcast. For more than 26 years, Eric has worked in financial planning, but his mission is deeply personal. He built his firm around empowering women over 55 to retire with confidence, clarity, and control. But today, it isn't about retirement accounts. It's about identity, security, loss, and what happens when life shifts right under your feet. Eric, thank you for being here. Welcome to the Sock Door Podcast.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be joining you.
Thank you. And we're so grateful to have you. So let's dive right in. So you lead your entire brand with this statement: I would not be the man I am today without the women in my life. Rarely do you hear men say this, and that's very powerful. So why do you lead with that?
Because it's absolutely true. I wish I could step back and show you the picture that I have right in front of me on my office wall. It's 5 generations of women that I still have in my life, all the way from my grandmother, who will be 91 in just a matter of a couple of months, to my granddaughter, who turned 2 years old just about a month ago.
Oh my gosh.
So I have 5 women, 5 generations that still fulfill me, that are part of what I do, why I do what I do on a daily basis. Starting with my mom, I was raised by a single mother. I always tell people, I don't say, unfortunately, that I never knew my biological father. They divorced before I was even 2. And for whatever reason people do, he chose not to really play a role in my life.
Yeah.
But I had my grandparents as well. So raised by a single mother, my grandparents played a very influential role in my life. My grandmother, again, about to be 91 years old in just a couple of months. She was widowed when she was 62. So the man I called daddy was my grandfather, because when you're 2 years old and everybody around you is calling this man daddy, that's what you call him too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so he played a huge role in my life, but he passed away when my grandmother was 62. And so if you do the math, she has been a widow for almost 29 years now.
Yeah.
And so it's just I don't want to leave out my wife. We're married. Our 30th anniversary is coming up very soon.
Congrats.
My daughter, my granddaughter, those are the women in my life. And again, I would not be the man I am today without any of them.
So looking back, Eric, and I love that you said all that. Thank you for sharing that with us, because it's so powerful and it's so rare to hear that, right? To hear that, I guess, that power given to the women in one's life. In that season, thinking back, what did you witness? What was it? More strength? Was it fear? Both? Like, what did you watch that brought you to kind of this decision?
Well, I have to point to a little bit more to my grandmother's story, simply because at my age at the time, being in my 20s, I was a little more cognizant of the challenges that she was facing at the time, having just kind of got into this financial services world.
Yeah.
And seeing that when he passed away, you find yourself, and this is actually many women, most women actually find themselves in a very similar situation, hopefully not as young, but find themselves in a situation where now they are forced to make these big decisions, not just even financial decisions, but life decisions on your own.
Yeah.
And we have a very close knit family, but that doesn't replace that person that you've been with for, in many cases, 40 plus years in my grandmother's situation, where now you very rarely even drove a car by yourself, much less have to make these big financial decisions by yourself. And so when you start seeing the things that you have to go through and not having somebody to talk about ideas or strategies, or what do you think about this? Seeing that now you're basically, it all falls on your shoulders. And we all know women will take that on their shoulders on their own.
Yeah.
Sometimes not always asking for help or not knowing who to ask for help. And so that's really what inspired me as I continued in this career, is being that trusted advisor to walk along that path with women that have gone through similar situations, so that they have somebody there by their side to help guide them, provide advice, not tell them what to do, but say, hey, here's what your options are. Here's what the circumstances are. Here's what I would advise, or here's what your options are, so that you can make the most informed, educated decision that you can based on your circumstances.
I love that. Somebody to actually bounce ideas off of and kind of walk through those questions. At what point, looking back, Eric, did it move from observation to a mission?
That's what, and my mom hates me telling this story, but I'm going to do it anyway because it's a very powerful. Because I think that what I try to her to understand is it has nothing to do with intelligence or anything else. It's that this stuff is not taught in school. We didn't grow up understanding Social Security.
Agreed.
So again, as I talked about, my biological father was out of the picture very early. She remarried a couple of times, but ultimately she got divorced when we moved to the Dallas area when I was in the 8th grade. And at some time as I was becoming an adult and having a family, she got divorced. And a few years after that, when she turned 62, she made the decision to start Social Security. And there wasn't anything inherently wrong about the decision. But the problem is, based on when she was born and what her age was at the time, there were options available to her that she didn't know about. And many people at the time didn't know about. So she fell under these rules that there used to be in place that went away just about 10 years ago, in fact, that you actually had the option of saying, well, I could have filed a application for ex-spousal benefits at the time because they'd been married, followed all the rules. She was married for more than 10 years. She could have filed for ex-spousal benefits and allowed her own benefit to continue to grow. And by the time she turned 70, we're talking thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't a circumstance where, again, she's a very smart lady. She does tax preparation. She has a bookkeeping, very successful business. It has nothing to do with intelligence. It's that this stuff is not taught in high school or college or anywhere else. And when it costs you those types of dollars that could impact the rest of your lifetime and your security, that's where I realized, hey, I need to step out there and I need to be that resource. I need to be that educator to say, hey, let's make sure we know what your options are, that you're not leaving money on the table, regardless of what the circumstances, whether it was a divorce or whether it was being widowed. And I found that Social Security is just one of those areas that should be much easier, but it's not.
Yeah.
And helping people understand, helping women specifically understand what their options are and how to make these decisions, or what you need to be considering to make the most informed and educated decision possible. That's what drives a lot of this. And again, Social Security gets a bad rap, as it maybe justifiably so, right? But for most people, and specifically women, it is the single source of lifetime guaranteed income that goes up every year. So whatever you think about the system and how it works and what you should be getting more, whatever the case might be,
right?
That's the fact. It's lifetime guaranteed and it goes up every year with inflation. So if you make the wrong decision, it could be costing you thousands of dollars.
Yeah. Such great advice. I mean, so tell me, how would a woman in their 40s, 50s, 60s navigate or find, if they think, okay, I feel like this question is multifaceted. So 40s and 50s could be a different, how do you find and prepare for potential changes or shifts in the Social Security, rulings or whatever, to know what your options are going into that, and how should they continue to stay on top of it? And then on the other side, not the other side, but on a different side, like in your 60s, when you're getting ready to retire, what are you looking for? Like, what questions should they be asking? So 2 questions there.
as you probably guess, I'm a little bit biased about the value that a financial advisor can bring to the table when we're talking about
Yeah.
these types of things. But regardless of whether you're working with an advisor or not, I think the biggest thing I can encourage women to do is take a seat at the table. Be part of those conversations because and I think there's some progression here over the last several years where women are becoming more involved. There more women are the breadwinner. They're taking control,
Yeah.
but there's still generations, whether we're talking Gen X or baby boomers, where there was these roles that we play, where it's the man is the breadwinner, the woman is and it does, and we've had a lot more dual income families, but it doesn't change the fact that so many women will either have early years where they were taking care of children and they weren't working, or maybe working less, or there's some period of time where they are now going to be the sole source of caregiving for their parents. And again, they've had to step out of the workforce in some form or fashion. But there's some of these separators as far as who does what. And in many cases, these generations where the man was responsible for a lot of the planning or the investing, because the woman was responsible for the children and take caregiving, those types of things.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one of the things I would definitely encourage, regardless of age, is to be part of those conversations. I tell this story. It's a story that we had a lady reach out to us not long ago, and she's in her early 50s. So this is not like she's, in her 70s or 80s.
Right.
But she reached out to us and said, hey, I'm going through a divorce. It's a difficult situation. She's got a son that's still in school. They've been married for 20 years. And her exact quote was, he's had a financial advisor since the first day we were married. I have never spoken to this person. So to think about where she's at now, she's getting divorced. She doesn't really have an idea of what her financial circumstances are. Where does that leave her?
Yeah.
And what are the challenges? Just thinking about what the challenges are that she's going to face. She played, maybe there's definitely arguments you can make for what role she played. Maybe she was the most important role of raising their son, but that left her out of the financial conversations for the most part. Now, to me, that's also a negative on the financial advisor for not saying, hey, I would like to meet your wife. I think that's a failure of the financial services industry for many years that has occurred to many, many women, where the financial services industry, being primarily male dominated, has left women out of the conversation too. And that's why I tell people, if you're a woman and you are meeting with a financial advisor, or you and your husband are meeting with a financial advisor, and you don't feel acknowledged or as equals, it's time to go find another financial advisor.
Yeah.
But be part of that conversation, whether it's you and your husband just having conversations about, well, I want to understand what's going on, because we know the statistics are out there that women outlive men. So any bad decisions are going to more likely impact the woman than the husband, than the man.
Yeah.
And so how can you become more educated? How can you understand what your options are, whether it's with a financial advisor or not? Step up, ask the question, be willing to ask those questions. That's the biggest thing I can encourage women to do.
Yeah. And I love what you said in the beginning. Take a seat at the table. Like that's what you got to do. So, because we often think of retirement is like more of a math problem, right? Like you got to figure out the numbers, how long is it going to last? Is it actually, I know this answer, but it's definitely more emotional than financial. Yes.
Absolutely. Because you think that this is another one of those significant life transitions. So when you've gone from working in a particular industry for 30, 40 years, and now you're retired, what is that next thing? What is that next phase of life going to look like? What am I going to be doing? I did a podcast episode on this a couple of months ago. Yeah. There was an article, I want to say it was in Forbes, I'm kind of drawing a blank, but the 1,000 hours of retirement. When you retire, what am I going to do with my 1,000 hours? So the general, you work 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. You retire, half of that, about 4 hours a day is going to be made up of just, errands or just stuff, life happening, whatever it might be. But you're going to have about 4 hours a day. You're going to have to come up with something to do. So what is that going to be? And obviously, number one, and from my perspective, I don't want our clients worried about money and saying, well, I got to plan my investments. I got to look at my income and my taxes and all the, no, I want you to be out there spending time with your grandchildren, traveling, going to unique places, doing unique things, taking a class, taking up a new hobby, whatever it is. What is it that you want to spend your time doing? You're not, because the worst thing you can do is say, well, I'm retiring from something. I want to retire to something. What is it that next phase of life is going to bring?
Love that. And I find that to be a lot of men. I don't hear it a lot from women. So what are women over, let's say over 55 afraid of? But you think they're rarely, they rarely say it out loud.
Well, I think one of the interesting things about that idea that men have that struggle with, identity, that the work was their identity. That's who they were. And now they have trouble finding that next thing to identify with.
Yeah.
One of the things that I see, and a lot of it is because of the women that we work with, again, are typically on the other side of a divorce or the other side of being widowed, where now that transition is just different because it's no longer us, it's me. I've got to now figure out what I'm going to do in my identity. Regardless, again, men may also often find their identity through work. Women often find their identity through family. And it's us, it's me and him. And we have these plans to go to this place and to go to that place, or to do these things and to do those things. And now he's no longer there. What do I do now? How do I put these pieces of the retirement puzzle together in a way that's still going to allow me to enjoy my life? Yeah. And so there's still that transition aspect, that identity piece that can still be missing when it's been us for the last 30, 40, 50 years maybe. And now it's me. And so how do I still live a fulfilling life? What is it that I want? Do I decide to move closer to family, to be near my grandchildren, whatever that looks like? But there's still that emotional piece that we need to find and identify. Who am I now? What is this going to look like going forward?
Okay. I love that. And do you see a pattern in women who weren't the primary financial decision maker? Is it more about money, or is it more about control? What do you think happens?
I think it's more, so the way I always explain it, money should simply be a tool for any of us. Money should simply be a tool to do the things we want to do to enjoy life. It shouldn't be the thing, right? Money's not the goal. Yeah. Where I think the differentiator as far as women, they want to know what's the money going to do for me, or what can I use the money for my family? How can I impact my grandchildren? And I think that's where identifying some of these specific goals, things you want to do, becomes so critical. Is just getting it out there and saying, okay, I do want to help my grandchildren go to college, or I do want to take my family on a big trip once a year. And so identifying those things that are most important. And you say, well, what's important about money to me? Because it's not going to be money. Money is not the answer. Well, it's just money. That doesn't work. Exactly. It's security. It's freedom. It's independence. It's ability to make an impact on others around me. And it doesn't necessarily have to be family. It could be, charitable inclination that you might have. So many people get involved with their pets or just making a difference in somebody else's life. But knowing what that looks like, and not feeling, one of the things that often happens is, and there's a lot of times this is after widow, is losing your husband because they pass away, is there's a level of guilt that you got to get past and say, okay, yes, this was supposed to be us. Now it's me. I received X amount of life insurance because he's gone. I don't know I can't move forward with this. And those emotions are real. And how do we help make decisions around moving past that and saying, well, I can still enjoy my life. I can still have fulfillment. I can still impact others around me, my family, friends, charities that are important to me. So just making those big decisions where money itself is not the objective. It's what can that tool do for me?
That is so true. Back in 2023, when I closed my business, I realized the hardest part wasn't the numbers. It was the identity shift. It was like, what do I do now? And it was so hard to kind of find myself again. So I'm sure you see that, as you said, in retirement too. So I want to pivot here a little bit. You left larger institutions and built your own firm. That's no small thing. And likely that decision wasn't easy. When you did that, was there a moment of doubt? Was there any kind of, anything that held you back a little bit?
Nothing in particular. I mean, it's anytime you make one of those big moves, it can be, there's always that fear factor.
Scary. Yeah.
But I think one of the things that really helped me was that was the time when my wife and I, it's Blake Wealth Management. I'm the licensed advisor, but my wife made the change with me. She was a teacher for 25 years. And talk about identity. She was an amazing teacher. So a teacher for 25 years, and we made this change. We did it together. And I said, okay, there's certain things I don't need to be doing or don't want to do. I hate to say it like that, but
yeah,
it's true.
I hear
But when we started Blake Wealth Management in 2020, we did it together. And I think one of the things we did was created this vision of what do we want life to look like? Because we're in a very fortunate situation where we can truly make a difference in people's lives, which then in turn can make a difference in our lives.
Yeah.
And it's the old, why am I drawing a blank on his name? You can have everything you want. Zig Ziglar. You can have everything you want in life if you just help enough other people get what they want in life. And this is very much what this industry is all about. Is if I can help enough women, enough people reach and have fulfillment, do a lot of things we've already talked about. If I can help enough people do those things and have a fulfilling life and impact their family and the others around them, that's going to do the same for us. And in fact, we just brought my daughter on in August, and my son started in December. So it is all of us.
So good. I love that. It's a family affair.
It is a very rare opportunity, but I feel completely blessed that I have this opportunity to have my family around them. I can require them to come home for Christmas now for team meetings.
The perks. I love it.
But I think we had this vision of what we wanted life to look like. And this is a very difficult industry, especially when you're first getting started. Things have changed a little bit to make it a little bit easier to get into. But when I first started, this was 1999, it was sink or swim. And this was right before Y2K and 9/11. I always joke, I started in, I think it was July of 99. So I got like 6 months of a good market, and then all hell broke loose for the next 3 years.
Oh my God.
But I'm still here, and I've seen it all. I've seen, the financial crisis. I've seen all that. So this is a difficult industry to persevere through. But if you can get to the other side where you now have a little bit more flexibility and freedom to again, have a truly great impact on the people around you, your family, your clients, most importantly. So that was really when we started. Back to your question. In 2020, we started Blake Wealth Management. We had a vision for what we were trying to do. Part of that being that we were going to focus on women. My wife has always been she's always been heavily involved in women's issues, women empowerment. And so it was just like this, it just came together. We talked about these pieces of this puzzle.
Yeah.
My story, my past, where I came from, plus her passion. She's an extremely passionate person. It just fit together, and we're now almost 5.5 years later, and we can't be happier, and we're extremely excited about what the future holds.
So good. And I love how you started it. First of all, I love this whole thing with the family. We're very family driven as well over here. And the whole thing where you said, we sat down and just first started with, what do we want our future to look like? What kind of life do we want to live? And I think, I'll be honest, I didn't do that. When I did that, I just had this like business ownership hat on for my probably third time. And I was like, I just want to do this business ownership. I didn't think beyond that. And that's on me, and I learned it's definitely a learning curve. Now, the next thing you did was start a podcast, which I love. And I've listened to it and it's wonderful. And you guys got to go listen to it. So that's a vulnerable thing. Not that you seem vulnerable whatsoever, but what pushed you to kind of like dive into that and speak publicly now?
Well, one of the things that, I'll call it an unfortunate aspect of what we do is that you just can't help everybody.
Yeah.
Right. And so one of the things as we made this transition, we said, what do we want to do? We want to work with a relatively limited number of households. And so they're not going to be in that situation where we got hundreds and hundreds of clients. Yeah. We want to be extremely impactful for a relatively few people that we can really make a difference. But that doesn't mean there's not a number of women out there that still don't need help. And so the couple of things I really wanted to do that I knew that could impact people, whether they were working with us or not, was start a podcast that focused on many of the issues that women face when we're talking about retirement, but not just the financial, not the Social Security stuff and the tax stuff. And I do a decent amount of that, but the caregiving impact, what the emotional impact of caregiving and what that does to women who they take on this responsibility of caring for children or parent. Again, so many now these days, there's a good thing, but longevity is a good thing.
Yeah.
But that means people are living longer. That means there's more healthcare issues, and who's typically responsible for that caregiving? It's women. So what is the emotional and financial impact that comes with caregiving again, primarily and mostly for women. So how can we help them navigate some of these challenges that they face? So thinking outside the box, going beyond just the traditional retirement, quote, retirement stuff, but thinking about caregiving and healthcare issues and those types of things, and getting this information out there so that even if they're not working with us, they're going to be able to take a positive step forward no matter what.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I wanted to do is do volunteer work. And I don't know if it's okay to mention any of these or not, or we'd rather.
Absolutely.
So there's a
yeah,
couple of
for
organizations that I do volunteer coaching for. One is Savvy Ladies, and they do free financial coaching for women, regardless of the circumstances. So if it's a tax issue, it's a divorce issue, it's a debt issue, it's a whatever, you can get free financial coaching through Savvy Ladies, no matter what your circumstances are. And there's also one called Wings for Widows. And actually, as the name entails, it's primarily for widows, where you get free coaching following what is for most the most emotional situation that they're ever going to deal with.
100%.
And helping navigate some of these challenges and decisions that have to come after that. Just getting your financial house in order so that you can manage the emotional side without the additional stress of the financial side, because they go hand in hand, unfortunately. We've had a number of clients who have lost a husband, and you're dealing with the emotions of that. And then all of a sudden you get all this financial stuff just dumped on top of you as well.
Right.
And so that's really where part of the mission that we had when we started Blake Wealth Management was actually our focus on working with women as clients, but being able to impact women beyond the people we can touch directly, whether it's volunteer work or the podcast. And those are two of the primary focuses we had beyond just the business itself.
So good. Savvy Ladies and
Wings for Widows. So savvyladies.org if you're interested.
I'm going to put this in the show notes, guys. So you'll
savvyladies.org
be able to
and then wingsforwidows.org, both tremendous organizations. The folks that started those organizations, they have very, you hear the stories about how they started, why they started the businesses, but that's what they do. They free financial coaching for women. Now the Wings for Widows is actually widows or widowers. Again, just because of the stats, more women are involved with that organization.
For sure.
But if you just need free coaching, free guidance, where you're not worried about, am I going to get sold something, or am I going to get pushed into something that I don't really need because I'm emotionally over here dealing with this, and now this person's come over here and saying, you need to do this or you need to do that.
Right.
That's what this helps you avoid those and just help you get your financial house in order to make better decisions where you can kind of separate the emotional component from it, still going through the emotions in many cases, many years beyond. I know, not to bring my grandmother up, but when I go to visit her, it never fails that there's a conversation that we have about my grandfather. And so he's still there. He's still part of her life almost 30 years later.
Yeah.
So when you're thinking about somebody who maybe lost a husband 6 months ago, even 3 years ago,
big deal.
You're still dealing with that. But then you have all these financial challenges that you're trying to deal with and figure out.
All at once.
Again, not having that other person to talk with, to say, well, should I do this? Should I do that? Who do you turn to in those circumstances? We like to say family, that, I can turn to my son or my daughter, but they're not dealing with the same stuff you are. If you're 65 and they're 35 or 40, whatever it is, they've got different financial challenges than you do. So how much real guidance can they provide versus somebody who, just to toot our own horn a little bit, that deals with this every single day?
Every day. That's right. Blake Wealth Management.com. Well, I'm going to make sure all these links are in the show notes for our listeners for sure. Now, Eric, we've reached a little bit of a fun segment in our podcast where we call it the 60-second drawer dash, where we kind of I'll throw some questions at you and just say whatever comes to mind. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
Okay. What's one belief about money you had in your 30s that you do not believe now?
I probably had a very similar mindset in my 30s that money is the thing. Whereas now that's not the case. It's what can money do? What can I use money for to impact my family, to impact those around me? Okay.
What did your mother teach you that still guides you?
Perseverance.
I love that.
I tell her, I've told her before, unfortunately we didn't get to do it this year, but the last 4 years we've done a big International Women's Day event. And I always have something to say about her. And one of the things I think about is the sacrifices she made being single in my very younger years I will never fully understand what she had to give up in order to give me the life that I have. For me not to really feel like it was a negative that I didn't have my biological father. That's huge.
Right.
I was not missing, there wasn't a missing piece to that. Because
My
again, I have my
soul aligned with
grandparents,
that.
but you think about the things that she did to make my life normal. That's, perseverance, and not even really personally knowing the full extent of what that even means for her.
Yeah. When do you feel the most at peace?
With family, with my granddaughter now.
Love that. What scares you more, losing money or losing time?
Again, that's one of those that has changed over time, but losing time, you think about,
Yeah.
the age factor, and I'm 53, so I hope that I've got many more years left. But again, the thinking about, well, how am I spending my time? What am I doing to make the most of it? Whether it's, again, being with family, impacting others through the business or through the volunteer work. It's, again, you just feel like that time. I was telling my wife the other day, it seems like all we do is get ready to go to bed. So every time I turn around, it's time to go to bed.
Oh my gosh. All right. Here's my last question for you. If your granddaughter watched this episode someday, what would you want her to understand about confidence?
Wow. That it comes from within. I think when you think about what your life looks like, I hate that you don't want to say, well, you can't rely on others. You want to say, yes, I can rely on people, but if it's what do I feel inside? How do I what's my self-talk? And keep doing what I can to make that positive and say, yes, I can do this. There's nothing that I can't do if I put my mind to it. And if she's 2 years old today, she last time she was with us, she picks these little yellow flowers. And she doesn't just pick one or two. She picks the whole field, one by one. She doesn't care what we're saying. Hey, Sloan, let's go. Time to go. She just keeps on picking. So it's interesting to see how she just deals with life now, and she just sticks with it. And I hope that continues. And as she moves on to bigger and better things, that she keeps that confidence built inside of herself to say, I'm just going to keep picking.
Sounds like she's learning perseverance.
I hope so.
Yeah. So for someone listening today who realizes they've maybe been avoiding this conversation, you've created something to help them sort of take that first step, right? And we talked about this before we jumped on. Can you share with our listeners where they can find that?
Absolutely. So I think one of the biggest challenges a lot of us have is, where can I get this information in an easy to digest spot? And so the two key things I'm going to share with the audience is what I call our tax and retirement planning cheat sheet, which again, just kind of gives you all these big numbers. If when you're trying to figure out how much can I put in my IRA or my 401k or all these different things. So you can find that at the simplyretirementpodcast.com/retirement cheat sheet. And the other one is hopefully you picked up from our conversation before about how important I think Social Security is, regardless, again, the positives and negatives of that. But helping make those decisions, educated, informed decisions, we have something called the Ultimate Guide to Women's Social Security Success, which again just gives you some of these key numbers that you need to be aware of, but also just helping you walk through some of the decisions about what am I eligible for? If I've been divorced, if I've been widowed, how do I know what I could qualify for? So it walks you through a very usable checklist to help determine some of those key factors. And you can find that at Women's Social Security Guide.
So powerful. Thank you so much for that, Eric. And we'll include all these links in the show notes. I think we have like 4 or 5 links. I want to make sure they're in there for you guys. I want you to have them because knowledge is power, right? I don't know who's coined that phrase, but I say it all the time. Knowledge is power. And to get educated ahead of time, I wish I would have done it. I did not. I'm 63 and I did not know that stuff going in. So I had to learn it recently, and talking with people such as yourself, which has been so beneficial and I'm so grateful for. So thank you for that. And like I said, we'll include it all. So Eric,
Awesome.
Before we wrap up, if there's one small step women listening today could take this week to maybe feel more confident about the future, what's a tiny dare or challenge that you would give them?
Identify what you feel. What's that question that's been on your mind for a while? That financial question that you feel like you don't know the answer to, and ask it.
Okay.
Ask your husband, ask your partner, ask somebody, ask a financial advisor, ask that question. Don't be afraid to ask the big questions, because ultimately for women, statistically, you're the one that's going to get impacted by not knowing the answer to that question. So get the answer. Ask number one, identify what is that big question that's been on your mind for a while. ask it. Ask somebody that can help you. If they don't know the answer, find somebody who does, or find the right resource that can help you get the answer that you need, and just keep asking.
That is perfect. That is so good and easily done. It's easily done. Eric, thank you so much, not just for your time today, but for the way you definitely showed up and shared some of your story with us. And you've chosen to serve women in your life and beyond with the volunteer organizations. Again, we'll have those in the show notes. And listeners, if today's conversation resonated and you're ready for more clarity around your own retirement journey, you can reach out to Eric at his website, blakewealthmanagement.com. And we'll, again, like I said, include this in the show notes. So as always, if something mentioned today, if it stirred something in you, please don't ignore it, because that's usually where growth begins. And you can find the Sock Drawer podcast on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Join us next week for more honest conversations about the messy middle, the pivots, the pauses, and the brave steps forward. And just remember, growth usually begins where you're willing to look. Take care.
All right, Sock Drawer family, that's a wrap on today's Drawer Dump. Big thanks to our guests for sharing their story and their heart with us. Until next time. Don't forget, life's too short for mismatched socks. Retire the ones with holes, inspire the ones that still shine. See you soon.